What's up, guys? Today I'm bringing you back another Q&A. So if you got any questions, post yours down below and let's begin. Would you consider a Smith machine AD press a legit variation, or the fact that is in a Smith rest points to this fabulous exercise? The Z press, as we call it, which is an overhead press done off the floor with no back support, is not the original Z press. It's actually a mistranslation. If you want one of the best shoulder builders of all time, it is the AD press done in the Smith machine. That is what has produced world-class overhead pressing strength in Zydrunas Savickas. So, is it a good exercise? Yes. Is it better than a free-weighted AD press? For hypertrophy? Possibly. Maybe it has a very small edge. In my opinion, once you master the movement pattern, the gains will be about the same. And you're still stable enough with a barbell such that force production is maximized. So I don't see there being a big number difference between the two. And even the movement pattern perspective, they're both very similar. So truthfully, it's interchangeable. Pick what you desire. But am I going to say that it's bad just because it's a Smith machine? No, that is dogmatic thinking that needs to die already. Like, I use a Smith machine every time I go to the gym. Now, I don't care. I'm a barbell lover. I have this beautiful Hydra rack. I have my Bells of Steel bar, my Westside Power bar. I'm a barbell man. I think the barbell is the greatest tool in existence. You can do everything with it. And I think a lot of guys are overcomplicating their life with all these machines. But the Smith, I mean, a lot of us should have embraced it many years ago. And the moment I can get myself a Smith attachment for this rack, like you bet, I'm going to use it on a frequent basis for some select motions. Just because it's a straight up and down, no deviation kind of press doesn't mean it's bad for the shoulders. Like, it's only bad if we're talking about developing false movement patterns, which is only relevant to elite powerlifters who are trying to really groove in that movement pattern. But if we know that even a straight up and down vertical press will have carryover to a strict overhead press, then that idea in itself is questionable. So just use the Smith. You know, there's a lot of great natural bodybuilders that are overhead pressing it. Look at Jeff Alberts. He lives on that thing. You know, when I go to the gym, I use the Smith on the incline. Now, don't get me wrong. The AD press, the way that I show you, is still my favorite. But if you go to a commercial gym where you don't feel like dragging over a bench to the power rack, or the free weight setup is too vertical, you can't really adjust it the way that you like, then there's nothing wrong with going in the Smith, especially if it's what allows you to perfectly get the angles you're looking for and you want maximum stability. You just want to be big, this will do it for you, guaranteed. Hey Alex, what's the progression to get to my first deficit handstand push-ups? I can handstand walk and do a few push-ups. Would you recommend raising my overhead press first? See, you fell for the calisthenics skill trap. Handstand walks have nothing to do with deficit handstand push-ups. There are a lot of skinny guys who can hold themselves all day. And guess what? If you compare those dudes to me, I can't do handstand walks. I can't even balance myself for more than 10 seconds. I have some of the worst handstand balance ever. No coordination. I have tried over many years. I suck at handstands. Yet, I can do 15 or more deficit handstand push-ups when lean, because the shoulder gains are there. And I'm not someone that do a lot of skill work. In fact, I don't really care about that. I just want to be big and strong from calisthenics. I know I'm ranting here, but if you can't do a deficit handstand push-up, your shoulders just aren't strong. And usually the standard is to get at least a bodyweight overhead press, because logically that's what you're doing, but in reverse. So if you weigh 180 and you can't overhead press 180, well, that's why you can't do the handstand push-up. It's not you holding yourself in a static position where you're not bending your arms, especially if you're going beyond the floor, like in the case of deficit. Your arms are coming super low, comparable to a vertical press done with a barbell. Same thing. And then you said, oh, I can do a couple push-ups. Again, that's far from cutting it. The standard would be at least 20 plus deficit pike push-ups, not a regular push-up. So if you can do maybe 30 push-ups to failure and you can balance yourself on your hands, there's no chance you'll be able to do deficit handstand push-ups. Like, guys don't realize how hard this is. In fact, in one of my recent videos where I show you all the form cues, I noticed the wash time was super low. And I know why. It's because most people can't can do the exercise. It is what it is. I get that. Whenever I show some shit that's like on an extreme level of difficulty, the view duration goes down. Irrespective of production quality, irrespective of the explanation or whatever the guys just can't do it. It is fucking hard. Listen, it's hard for me too. I get it. Therefore, you gotta have a certain degree of muscularity in your shoulders and be strong at vertical enough variations. Horizontal is not gonna cut it. Hey Alex, for compounds, what do you think about 2 sets to failure, a top set in the 6 to 9 rep range, followed by a back off set in 10 to 12 or 12 to 15? Been doing that since September, and I really like the training results. Thanks for the great videos. That's basically how I train as well. I'll do the back off set if I know that for my second set, I won't be getting the effective reps in. So you said 6 to 9 reps. I usually do around 5 to 8. So if I got 6 reps on my first set, then there's a risk that I might not be able to get 5 on the second. Therefore, I'll probably drop the weight between 5 and 15%. But it's not because there's anything magical about back downs. You're just doing this so that you stay within the 5 to 30 rep range to failure, assuming you're going to failure. It's not that varying the rep ranges produces different hypertrophy outcomes through some unknown mechanism. Like, it all boils down to mechanical tension. Just that here keeps you psychologically fresh. It's fun, and you get PRs in different zones. So the only pro tip I can give is to make sure the back down isn't too drastic, because you don't want to be doing super low reps followed by super high reps. Otherwise, you're generating additional fatigue for nothing, especially on a compound movement. Like if you're going to do sets of 5 on a back squat and then 15 immediately after, like what's the point of doing that? What's the benefit? I'd rather you stick to the low zone, moderate at best. Like there's no need to do the bottom of the hypertrophy rep range all the way to the top. Like that's just being extreme if you ask me. So if you're doing 6 to 9, then 10 to 12 is perfectly doable, my man. You don't have to do 12 to 15 or 15 to 20. Not necessary, especially for the big, heavy compounds. Also, if you feel like you're still gonna be in the target rep range for your second set, then there's also no need to do the back down. So if you got 9 reps on your first set, then chances are you can get at least 5 to 6 on your second. Therefore, you should keep the weight the same, especially if you didn't even go to failure. If you had a rep or 2 in reserve, there's no need to drop it down. Only do so if there's a little bit of a concern. Just want to ask how one can decide for themselves whether the bulk or cut. When I started cutting, I look great, but then I feel like a skinny wimp and that I have to weigh more. Right now, I'm sitting around 175, 15% body fat. I love the content, brother. That's excellent. If you don't think you look good at this, then you're either miscalculating your body fat, probably 20% or more, which is very likely. It's usually around 5% or so difference. Or you're comparing yourself to steroid users, or you do need to put on more muscle, and there's nothing wrong with that. You just got to be in this game for longer. Like years ago, I made a video talking about how you won't be big and shredded because I'm not big enough yet. But the thing is, that was a long time ago, and I've gained some lean tissue since then to the point where I do look big and shredded now. So it's just about the timing. So if you get below 15% body fat, let's say 12, 10, or even single digit, and you're still not looking amazing, like you're ready to step on stage and kick some ass, then you just haven't put in the work yet. I'm sorry. Even if you've been training for years, you're not buff enough. It is what it is. So you need to do more bulks, if you ask me. I wasn't big enough in 2016, 2017. I am now. Took a good 6 years, but I got to this point. So, unfortunately, guys are way fatter than they realize. Yet they think they're leaner. So when they cut down to find out they're not that big, they either believe that anyone who looks good must be on roids, or that they lost a tremendous amount of muscle. It must have been the deficit. No, you just never had the muscle to begin with. You weren't as jacked as you thought you were, and your body fat was higher than you thought. So my best advice is to honestly continue embracing that bulk. Even if you're delusional about your current state, as long as you bulk for many more years to come, eventually get to that level where you are jacked enough. And how many bulks and cuts is it going to take? No clue. It depends on your genetics, how good your training has been leading up to this point. And I mean, I don't know. I'm not coaching you one-on-one. This is a generic question. But it's going to take some years. I can promise you that. And you have to get yourself uncomfortable, both on the bulk side of things and leaning down. So when do you bulk? If after getting lean, you're not jacked enough, or if you've been plateauing, or if you like the look, you want to enjoy looking bigger in clothes, you want the best progress. I mean, the calorie surplus will do it for you. Irrespective of how you look, if you're at a higher body fat and you're eating enough food to satisfy recovery needs, then bulking is always going to be worth it. So it doesn't even matter if we look at the visual aspect. If you bulk for long enough, it's pretty much always going to be worth it. And you don't have to necessarily figure out through bulks and cuts if you have enough size. Eventually, I mean, if you bulk for 5 years straight and you cut down, you're going to have a great physique 100% of the time, if you ask me. Like, imagine if I would have skipped all those cuts. From when I started popularizing bear mode till this year. Let's say I just would have been in the mid 200s and then just done one cut to get down to this level of shreddedness. Hey, maybe I would have had even more muscle. It's totally possible. I would say at least the same amount of size, but potentially a bit more. Regardless, I'd be shredded in the 150s, looking big and jacked. And I know that might sound like a contradiction because the absolute weight, but I'm a shorter guy. It's what it is, okay? And, you know, there's weight limits even when we talk about classic physique, but that's a different topic altogether. And I can only get so heavy. Just to say, in the enhanced world, the limit is like 185. For natties, it's like 165, single digit. So I do have a lot of muscle mass for this frame. Don't just look at the number. All you guys are like, oh, you're $150, $160. I want to see you at single digit with these measurements. You'll get humble real fast, trust me. Hi Alex, should I continue with the max effort method when I begin my cut or change to a different type of training style? Cheers, you're looking shredded, my man. Thank you. I wouldn't mess with max effort training because you're not making any strength gains during a calorie deficit, at least not trying to maximize your 1 rep max. You know there's going to be some performance degradation, and so why stress your recovery further with the most stimulating rep imaginable? Super slow, grinding to the limit, just generating additional fatigue. Also, your tendons are probably not in the best position right now, especially if you've been in a calorie deficit for months. So you might increase the risk of injury for no added benefit. Personally, I don't use the max effort method when cutting unless it's for some calisthenics motions like weighted pull-ups, one-arm pull-ups, which aren't even singles at this point. Whatever allows me to get more out of less weight, what isn't axial loaded. So I'm not going to do a barbell back squat or conventional dead 1 rep max. If it's something that I know I'm not going to feel banged out the next day, then sure, I can go really heavy. But even then, I'd probably cap it at 90%. Like, what's the point of maxing out in a deficit? You tell me. I can't think of any benefits, so I'll just drop it. Like, you can still have a volume day, intensity day kind of setup. So maybe for an intensity day, you can stick to the 5 to 8 rep range, which, by the way, produces equal hypertrophy to higher zones, but you're still dividing it. And then the volume day, you can do 8 to 12 or 10 to 15 or whatever. Like, it doesn't really matter. As long as there's some division going on, you can still say that you're periodizing or undulating or using different percentages or whatever. You don't need to do singles, doubles, triples. You don't have to do the lowest possible extreme just to call it an intensity day is what I'm saying. And certainly when you're cutting, I mean, yeah, you don't have to max out. In fact, the more you avoid it, probably the better you're going to feel throughout this cut. Try to minimize your fatigue as much as possible. If you haven't seen me do it much, then there's a very good reason. Even though I'm a conjugate promoter, I love being the jack of all trades. I'm not going to do something that's not contributing to my results, especially if the goals are hypertrophy only related, which is typical of most people who cut. You're doing this to look better in most cases. In the past, I prioritized bench press more than any lift. Now it's seated overhead press over my bench press. But I know by doing this, my bench press will get weaker. Do you recommend continuing? Up to you. You just want massive, boulder shoulders. You don't care if your chest flattens out a bit or maintains. If so, continue. Like, that's what I did in 2016. I took an entire year off benching, and I don't regret any of it. Actually, when I went back to it, I was still able to bench 3 plates, despite doing no work whatsoever, because the general strength was maintained. And keep in mind, you're still going to work your upper chest through a lot of these vertical motions, especially if you're doing inclines to raise your vertical. Worst case, you lose a tiny bit of strength. But what I would suspect is that if you address the correct weakness, and if you've been prioritizing the bench for a long time, you're probably very dominant at those horizontals. So if you make that switch to the vertical, get stupid strong, that's actually gonna raise your long-term potential. So I've been talking about the importance of overhead pressing for this exact reason. And during my 405 bench journey, I never dropped the overhead press. Even though it was less specific, the fact is my shoulders were holding back my bench press strength. So by favoring it above even more horizontal presses is what I needed. So if you're anything like how I was, you're just a horizontal beast. You can see a clear weakness between the vertical and the horizontal. The ratio is off. Then you're favoring overhead press for months or even up to a year, or maybe hitting minimal benching on the side just to get some volume. But like, you just being an overhead press specialty beast is not going to harm your gains. So you don't know for certain that your bench is going to go down. It might actually go up. It might maintain. I don't know what the is going to happen. You'll find out after you specialize. But don't think that specialization is a bad idea. And keep in mind, you don't have to be maximally strong at everything at any given time. Just like powerlifters have their volume phases and their intensity phases, or high specificity followed by low specificity. You can do the same thing with this. We're going to be training for the rest of our lives anyway. If you want to specialize in those Boulder shoulders temporarily, I mean, go right ahead. Don't have regrets. Plus, you'll be able to find out for yourself if the carryover is legit. Maybe you realize, oh, this was a complete waste of time. Or it's the opposite. Your bench just shoots up immediately after. I say it's worth experimenting, just like I did. Because now I can give back to you. I can speak from experience instead of theorizing, saying, oh, but specificity dictates that the bench will not raise because you're just doing vertical. Shut the f up. Get in the trenches. My question is how to stop swinging with pull-ups. I'm extremely bottom heavy and always had problems with swinging during pull-ups to the point where I probably have the strength to do 10 reps, but can only do 5 because of having to pause and stop the swing at the bottom of every rep. Great video as always, and have a good one. You answered your own question. You know how to solve the problem. Just stop ego lifting. When you do fast, jerky repetitions, which is typical and what you see in AMRAP competitions, and I've done many of these myself, naturally, it's hard to stay vertical. There will be some forward and backwards momentum. You're in a sense including some minor kipping, and the legs are probably bending and straightening simultaneously. So the fact that you can do 10 with that kind of form doesn't mean that your back got any more stimulus. I'd rather you do 5 good reps than 10 jerky ones. It's about mechanical tension for the back muscles. You're trying to pull so that they fatigue, not that you're using momentum to get from point A to B. That's the difference between someone who's just doing pull-ups for the sake of saying, yeah, I can do this many reps, versus someone who's doing this for bodybuilding purposes. And being bottom heavy actually would make it less likely to swing. So, in a way, I would call this a blessing. There's nothing wrong with that. Just control your reps. As long as you're doing the exercise right, it doesn't matter if your reps get cut in half. Are you trying to gain or display? That said, maybe your body positioning is off. Perhaps your torso is moving all over the place when you do your reps. I recommend maintaining one angle, keeping it there the entire time. So if you're going to lean back, stay lean back. If you're going to do posterior pelvic tilt, maintain the posterior pelvic tilt. Whatever variation you choose to bias, don't deviate away from it. So don't switch from arch back pull-ups to relaxed halfway through the set. So that will mean paying extra attention to the form. At the end of the day, it comes down to eliminating all forms of ego. And the biggest thing is controlling that negative. As long as you do that, like, you don't even have to pause in the body. Proper speed on the way down prevents the shifting of body weight. Now, if you have this problem going weighted, maybe it's not the way you're controlling, but rather the plates swinging. So in that case, you gotta hug it tighter with your feet or your thighs. But either way, you're gonna have to be mindful of your form. You're not just pulling up and down. Hey Alex, I need your advice. I'm having elbow pain from pull-ups, some rows, barbell curls, and I can't even do chin-ups. Feels like I can't handle no torque whatsoever. Have you experienced it? And if so, how can I fix it? Absolutely. I have hypermobile elbows and know what golfer's elbows feels like. One thing you can try is using a thumbless grip. Many times when you have that thumb under, it cranks your wrists a little bit inwards and creates pressure right here. So not gripping so tight can instantly solve the problem for a lot of lifters. But if that doesn't work, you can even strap up. Figure eights being preferable because now you don't have to grip at all. Like you could just hang there literally and pull with the elbows. So whatever minimizes the forearm tension, which is terrible for your grip, and I certainly wouldn't do this in the long term, but as a temporary solution, that's gonna work, absolutely. And then the other thing with this question, I can kind of see that most of your pain is coming from straight bar work. The only exception was when you mentioned some rows. You didn't specify what that was, but barbell curls give you pain and chin-ups as well. Is it a coincidence that you have the same hand positioning? Sounds to me like you need some gymnastic rings. I will bet if you did a ring chin-up today, you wouldn't have elbow pain. Sounds like you just might not be built for doing too much straight bar work. It causes overuse. That's either going to mean using a semi-supinated position so that you're not fully like this, but right about there, like with an easy bar, or having something that features some natural rotation coupled with not maximally gripping. Like whatever is restrictive is an issue. Now, if you can't get away from these fixed implements, then you're just going to have to rotate the variations a lot more frequently, and that will do wonders even if it's not the best for your build. Like that in itself, like you can get away with a lot of shit as long as you rotate. So don't just do chin-ups, and also stay away from always using a narrower grip. That's what caused a lot of problems for many. I found that medium or wider is easier on the elbow. The hardest thing on your elbow is going to be a super close chin-up, like the prisoner style. Oh, you are asking for some problems because now you're really trying to force something in. So whatever is unnatural, you know, usually the more flare you got, like right about here, the better things are going to be. So always think about how you're doing those pulling motions. Hey Alex, I was wondering how you program ab training into your workouts. Love the videos, man. I've been getting this question a lot recently because I'm shredded and my abs are popping and they're thick. They look amazing. And guys assume that it must be because of my training. Truth is, has nothing to do with that. It's just a body fat percentage. Most of you have great abs, you just gotta reveal it. Now, obviously we can talk about direct work, and I have done my fair share over the years, but that was literally years ago. Back when I was trying to focus on those heavy overloads. But nowadays, I'm extremely lazy with ab training. I barely train them at all. Now, you can say that I've maintained the size, or maybe it's the work that I did from way back, but I think it's more likely the fact that I just got lean enough. It is what it is. So what do I do for abs? Axial loaded motions. You know, 90% of the time I train at home. So I'm always doing something with a bar on my back, or I'm standing up. Like, it's impossible for me to have a weak core. Not when I train here, okay? And then I do a boatload of calisthenics. What do you expect? I do L-sit pull-ups, 20 reps, no problem. Anytime I use my rings, I'm always coordinating my body weight in space, doing hard variations that involve a lot of core strength. This is just an automatic side effect. And even though I'm not doing a lot of direct spinal flexion work, the isometric tension is through the roof. And there are times where my abs can get close to muscular failure despite not having much dynamic motion. You can still get a stimulus if you're contracting hard enough. Like static contractions can do a lot for you, but you gotta be training intense enough. Like I'm a strong guy, I have no weak links. And when I did used to train my abs, I didn't just do high rep, 8-minute ab workouts. Like no, I used to go weighted. That's what you gotta do. Work up to 45 pounds, full range of motion. And don't just use the floor. Do it off an ab mat. Get complete range of motion. Leg raises, same thing. Flex all the way. Open up. Raise your standards. Progressive overload. Your abs are like any other muscle. They can grow. They can get thicker. Eventually, you can see them through even a higher body fat. So that's what I used to do. Not anymore, but I didn't baby them is what I'm saying. So if you want your abs to look amazing, then get them super strong. Induce progressive overload like any other muscle. Get lean enough. And usually that's going to be at least 15-20% body fat to see the abs through the fat. So if you still can't see them, then you're probably fatter than you think. And obviously the best thing you could possibly do is just get lean. Like anyone who's between 8 and 12% body fat is going to have a nice six pack. Period. And it's no coincidence that the time right now where I'm doing the least amount of ab work is where my midsection looks the best, because there's veins there. I'm shredded. I can't even pinch. There's no fat. I have a 28-inch waist. This was the only logical outcome. It's not because some secret ab routine that I discovered in the last year. If anything, my abs used to be thicker when I actually treat them a lot more seriously. And certainly there's more potential there. So at the end of the day, it's a cliche, but abs are made in the kitchen. And that's what you're seeing right now. So that's about it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this Q&A. I'm trying to give you whatever energy I have left. It's not easy for me. But if you got any more questions, post them down below. And I'll see you in the next Q&A.